Welcome to the 5th episode of our series. Today, we will spend some time trying to better understand the infrastructure associated with the incident we are investigating. The infrastructure used by attackers can vary between attacks, but often it does not. Having good visibility of all the external resources attackers use to upload stolen data or communicate with malware inside the victim's infrastructure will help us to mitigate the attack and uncover its true extent. Let's begin.
VirusTotal tries to get as much information as possible around any sample, including the infrastructure it connects to. However, this is limited by VirusTotal's visibility and by the nature of the malware. VirusTotal will try to establish connection between a sample and any infrastructure, IP, URL, or domain based on its dynamic behavior when detonating in any of the sandboxes. In the Wild modifier makes it possible to find if samples were found being downloaded from any site. This also allows us to find if a sample was found distributed in the wild from a particular domain. For example, this query finds samples distributed from discordapp.com. In some cases, the malware itself includes IPs, domains, or URLs in itself to interact with the infrastructure. When found, they will be shown as embedded. Sometimes, this is not possible to obtain, as infrastructure is obfuscated or encrypted in the sample, or in an internal configuration file. We can search for samples having a particular network behavior using the behavior_network modifier, for instance, finding the ones connecting to a particular domain or IP. Remember, we can also see what interacts with any element in our infrastructure by checking the Relations tab in our domains or IPs. We can get more detailed information using behaviors_ tags for samples using a particular protocol, in this case, FTP. With these modifiers, we can also monitor any unexpected traffic interacting with our infrastructure. But let's get back to a more usual use case. We will usually have a certain number of indicators, and we want to know what they're connecting to. Connections can be made to legitimate websites. We usually will filter these out. AV detections can help us quickly focus on suspicious infrastructure elements. Remember, AVs can also have false positives, especially when having a low detection ratio. It could also be the case that something is legitimate but was compromised by attackers to spread their malware. AV vendors provide categories for domains and IPs that can help us get additional context. Sometimes malware uses legitimate resources as part of its infrastructure. For instance, downloading different artifacts from online storage systems or communicating with encrypted messages through social media. This way, infrastructure won't be blocked by security systems and traffic won't look suspicious. In this example, the in the wild distribution shows malware was distributed from legitimate sites. When unsure about any network resource, check its VirusTotal report. Relations, including communicating and referring files, URLs, or domains it resolves, and historical resolutions can provide insightful details. In this example, we find C2 patterns for a well-known botnet in the URLs for its particular IP. We can actually use this knowledge and search for additional suspicious URLs having the same path.
It is not always possible to prevent an ongoing attack simply by blocking its infrastructure, although this can be a powerful tool. Remember that the notorious WannaCry attack stopped because its control domain was registered by a security researcher before the attackers were able to, effectively cutting the head of this extremely widespread malware. This is not necessarily good advice though, and before taking this action, we need to have a thorough understanding of what the malware in question's capabilities are. Imagine a malware that is able to destroy a system once it loses connection with its command and control infrastructure. If we understand who the adversary behind the campaign is, we can use that knowledge to take our investigation further.
Let's continue investigating the role of every networking element in the infrastructure we're investigating. In an ideal case, we will find a single clearly malicious element that concentrates malware communication, in this case, an embedded IP found in the body of the malware. We would need additional context to help qualify the network element. but it seems pretty clear that IP concentrates a lot of malicious activity. In some cases, VT will help us identify network elements such as domain using different tags. For instance, the tags potential C2 tags suspicious command and control domains. Top 1K details the popularity of the domain. It is unlikely for very popular domains to host a command and control unless hacked. However, as we already saw, they can be used as malware distribution to avoid filtering and detection. Other tags like DGA indicate that the domain is generated by an algorithm, typical for botnets. In these cases, filtering some domains out of our infrastructure might not be worth it. DGA, in conjunction with potential C2, is quite a clear signal of maliciousness. If we're able to find patterns in a domain or URL generation, we can use them to identify malicious activity as we saw before. One of the best case scenarios is when we can find additional context about any element in the infrastructure we analyze in the collection. In this case, by expanding a suspicious node, we see it belongs to a collection we can explore in more detail and get additional context. TTPs can be also network-related, which can be helpful to detect malware's actions in our victim's environment and for hunting additional malware. In this case, we can combine TTPs and additional details on the behavior to find more suspected samples. We can observe that conditions are too generic, and despite combining several ones including behavior similarity, TTPs, and an IP, we get too many results. When available, we can analyze PCAP files created during malware execution. This might provide interesting details. We can either download it from the corresponding sandbox for further analysis, or, when available, we can find PCAP parent or children file in VirusTotal. In that case, this is a file created resulting from a traffic during sandbox execution, typically HTML or other files reconstructed from the traffic. Depending on the traffic generated by a sample in the sandbox, we might get its JA3 hash. This is the signature of a malware communication for certain protocols, and although quite broad, it can help us identify more samples belonging to the same family. When we don't have the time or resources for a deeper analysis on malware's communication, crowdsourced IDS rules might help. They might be deployed in the victim's organization to detect additional suspicion traffic, for example. The patterns in the rule will help us understand malware's activity. Most of the time, rules are self-descriptive. What can we do with all this information? How to use it to disrupt an attack? There are different options to consider given the circumstances and the nature of the malware and the attack. One of the options is to block inbound and outbound command and control domains, as well as any domains used as distribution vectors. This will definitely alert attackers, but maybe will cut their access. We can also monitor our infrastructure internally, checking logs and monitoring traffic to trace additional suspicious activity. Monitoring and blocking malicious domains of active campaigns is a healthy practice. Other than internal monitoring, we can also set up external monitoring rules to create custom feeds we can later ingest in our infrastructure. We can base them on any of the patterns we found during investigations, or based on third parties we trust, like CobbleStrike collections with fresh domains.